government in Guam has appointed a commission on decolonization and self-determination. And I think most Americans don't realize, people born in Guam, they get US citizenship, but the place is still treated as a US colony. And there's ways in which it's actually worse than that, as bad as that sounds, because Guam is our human shield if we end up in a war with either China or North Korea, and it doesn't matter like who started it or why it happened, right? So we put a nuclear bomber base in Guam that basically guarantees that if we go to war in Asia, Guam becomes a priority target of our enemy to get nuked. So it's not hyperbole. Like, we're literally treating them as an object. And that is the exploitative nature of strategy and colonial relationships, right? And so this commission just published their first report ahead of a national referendum on self-determination. It's very surprisingly good read. Commission reports are usually like dry as fuck. But so the report outlines that, Guam has three strategic options, right, for moving towards self-determination. One is full U.S. statehood, right? So basically becoming like Hawaii, a fully fledged part of the federal system, right? Another option is full independence or full nationhood. So it would be like, becoming the Philippines, right? And then the third option is quote unquote free association. And free association is the deal that the US has with Palau and the Marshall Islands and the Federated States of Micronesia. And you get to have formal sovereignty over your domestic affairs, technically, but you give up control of your foreign policy and your national security to the US, right? So you join an American sphere of influence in a very formal, official way as a subordinate client. And so it's kind of like a partial sovereignty arrangement. And so the report walks through the pros and cons of these strategic choices, which it's true, but I had never seen it quite laid out this way. And so in that sense, this report is very much like a first of its kind. But also, there's no Goldilocks answer here. The US has put Guam in a situation where there's a high price to be paid for any move toward decolonization, right? For Guam, there's a high price to be paid, that is, right? There's cons to every path. So I'll put the report in the show notes. I would encourage people to take a look at it and maybe start becoming more sort of conscious about Chamorro self-determination, because as a status quo, I mean, this was not in our imaginations forever, right? Guam is part of the blind spot of American empire. But as a status quo, we're perpetuating an injustice that's going to become a strategic problem for us if we don't do what's right. And what's right is to support self-determination for Guam. And it's just unclear how that will cash out, what that should look like ultimately, right? Because it depends on what they decide. So one of the things that worries me here is that no matter what Guam decides in a referendum, the US has all the control here because it's literally the colonizer. So Congress is going to have to pass laws in order to grant Guam statehood or to grant Guam independence or to establish a free association arrangement, a sphere of influence arrangement, right? It's really hard to see any of those things happening within the current political context. And that's a little worrying, depressing. And the final thing I'll add on this is that, I shared this report on social media and it got a lot of support, but there were a couple like China hawk type people who tried to argue that we cannot even talk. They said this is literally said to me, we cannot even talk about decolonizing Guam because that will weaken us and strengthen the CCP. And like, fuck you. That's insane. I mean, if you believe colonization of any part of the world needs to be sustained because decolonization might play into China's hands, then you are an imperialist bro, straight up. So you have got to go, you have been down the rabbit hole, right, of threat mongering and rivalry. Like you're so deep in this shit that you have become a bad guy. You are part of a threat making machine. You are bad for security and stability and freedom. So go fuck yourself. Do not let self determination of others be held hostage by geopolitical fever dreams, man. So, shout out to the Commission for the Decolonization of Guam.
I was really surprised when reading the thing because when you sent it through, it was having a quick glance through. They fit a lot into like 17 pages, and it's still
Yeah.
like broken down like really easily enough to read. Like I don't like I've got maybe limited knowledge on this topic, but hey, I'm still getting like a lot of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very readable, right?
could be textbook reading for a class on Pacific history or
Yeah.
U.S. World War II history, Pacific theater, but also very helpful breakdown of some very first principle themes and ideas, like what is decolonization, what does it mean to be a colony? Really interesting stuff.
Yeah. 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 Very refreshing novel.